Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke. I'm so glad you're here. This is that platform, the one you've been looking for, the one that gives the most up-to-date, groundbreaking information from some of the best minds within the natural products industry, as well as some of the wonderful voices outside the industry, with everybody bringing great messages and great stories to share. If you like what we're doing, please consider giving us a like, a share, or a subscribe, or better yet, do all three. We'd appreciate it. Today, I'm so excited. My guest today is Ric Scalzo, and he's back with us again for our episode 5 of our deep dive into regenerative herbs. As you can see from the description in the program, you'll see what an amazing talent he is, what he's done, what he's doing, and what's upcoming. So sit back and enjoy. I think you're really going to enjoy the show today. Hey, Ric, how are you?
I'm good. Having a great day today. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It's getting warm here in the desert in Las Vegas, and spring, summer's on their way, and I can see it's absolutely beautiful there in Costa Rica.
Yeah, it's a lovely day.
So, we've been able to successfully do some really good things on the podcast together. I think a lot of people have tiptoed around herbs. They've got a little bit of information. There's been a lot of new discoveries on herbs over the last decade or so. But I think there's a lot of new people in the industry that maybe giving them a better start on these wonderful, powerful herbs. And we've been deep diving into them individually. We started with turmeric, we did ashwagandha, we've done ginger, we've done passion flower, and today we're going to do Bacopa. And I think that's a really wonderful herb. It's one of my favorites. Passion flower and Bacopa are my go-tos. So I love those. So maybe we could talk a little bit about maybe Bacopa, the history of it, and then maybe work our way through why regeneratively grown Bacopa may be a better choice.
Yeah. Well, the history, gosh, Bacopa has a long history. It's one of those herbs that emerges from the Vedic tradition, the Ayurvedic tradition of medicine. So that tradition goes back over 5,000 years. So when we talk about, how long Bacopa has been known, used, and now more recently researched, it's quite a special herb. I was thinking about, the the overarching properties of Bacopa as in an Ayurvedic herb as a rasayana. And have you heard that term before? Rasayana?
I have.
I don't know if all your listeners are familiar, so I'll explain.
Please.
Rasayanas are herbs that tend to restore the vital force. So they work on a very fundamental level, but they also have specific actions. And when we think about herbs like Bacopa as a rasayana, that means that it's going to restore from a very deep level some of the very, very fundamental organ systems and tissues in the body. And, when you look back into the Ayurvedic literature, Bacopa was considered not just a rasayana, but a rejuvenator. And it was considered to be translated from the Vedic language, Sanskrit. It was considered to be the herb of the intellect. And interestingly enough, newborn babies were kind of touched and kind of swathed with Bacopa leaves and stems in order to bestow more intellect to the child.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how in India they really revered this plant. They knew all about it a long time ago that it was a herb for cognitive function. And today, we use it in some very unique ways, but historically it was used in really rejuvenating, the physiology, specifically the brain. But I love it. You talk about how it's grown regeneratively and how we happen to grow it. I think we're one of the very few, if the only grower of regenerative organic Bacopa in the world, as far as I know. So we're doing quite well with it.
It's such a beautiful plant too, and to see I know you're getting ready to go into a harvest again, but to see the green, the lushness of the green in all over the farm down there is it's just so enlightening, but engaging and invigorating just to see the beautiful colors of the wonderful herbs that are there, and then to know in my heart that they're going into formulas that we get to use, and we get to benefit from, even better.
Yeah, Bacopa is a member of the Plantagenaceae family, and it's kind of somewhat some people confuse it with gotu as kind of a similar herb. Some people think it's the same as gotu. It's not. Gotu is a member of the parsley family, and yet the actions are quite similar. They're both referred to in Vedic a description as the Brahmi herb. And so I think because it's confusing with gotu, I don't refer to it as so much as a Brahmi herb anymore. I think I like to just call it, what it is. I used to use gotu all the time for cognitive function. Now I use Bacopa. It's funny how I came to start cultivating it in Costa Rica here. We actually had some sprigs from plants that I had kept from North Carolina. I kept 18 plants, and I took some cuttings off of those plants, and I wrapped them in paper towel, wet it down, and brought them into Costa Rica. And from those 18 sprigs, like they're little runners, and about every inch along the runner, there's these advantageous nodes which tend to root and develop new plants. And I developed a whole greenhouse full of Bacopa.
Is Bacopa one of the plants where they have to be completely reseeded, or after they're harvested, do they automatically just start growing back?
Yeah, I never actually seeded Bacopa in my life. I only propagated it through through cuttings of the stems, and after we harvest it, it's like it gets a haircut, and we get a knife and take it along the edge of the growing trays that it's in. We grow it in a greenhouse, and then it grows right back.
Wow.
6 to 8 weeks later, we have another harvest.
That's fantastic. I personally have always been very much attracted to the herbs that help with cognitive function. Personally, myself, coming from an Alzheimer family, my grandmother, 7 brothers and sisters, all Alzheimer's, dementia, and it's very, very scary. And my mother is going to be 90 in July, and she's one of those people that the body is not cooperating, but the brain is perfect. She reads like a book a day. She's always done this since I've known her. She's been an avid reader. And so, I try to do things that are very, functional for my brain, because it seems like everything I do has to do with my thinking, my talking, and my writing. So for me, it's very important. And although with lion's mane and the mushroom side, Bacopa has been my go-to for a long time, even before, can I say, it was cool to do Bacopa? I was doing it back then.
Yeah, and when I was growing up in North Carolina, Bacopa wasn't on my radar. It was mostly gotu that was on my radar, and I grew a lot of gotu in our greenhouse up there. The reasons why gotu and now Bacopa are greenhouse grown is because these crops send out runners along the top of the soil, and as I said, every inch or so they have these advantageous nodes along the runner, and those runners then those nodes root themselves along, and so you can propagate Bacopa very easily this way. And because it grows along the surface of the soil, if you were to try to grow it outdoors, it would largely become weed overgrown, and it would not grow well. And I know in India, they do grow it outdoors, and unfortunately in India, where a lot of it's grown, they grow it where cows will kind of trample along the same pastures, and then you get contamination from the cow dung, and which is another problem, to be reckoned with. But growing it in the greenhouse, I can grow it pristinely, and really manage the soil regeneratively the way we do. And it just produces one of the most bioactive, nutrient-dense crops that you can imagine.
Someone asked me the other day, I had done a training for Kokora. I was on the East Coast, and they asked me, we were talking about the Emmy, the natural
Yes.
super gold juice that we make down there that feeds and nourishes. And they asked me about Bacopa being greenhouse grown. Is the Emmy used in those as well?
Absolutely. We use, and I'll explain Emmy so everybody
Please.
understands what it.
I love
what
the
it
way
really
you tell it.
But no, the thing is that, we grow it in soil first. That's essential for regenerative farming. You have to use soil. You can't use hydroponics or some other, medium in which to grow. So we grow it in soil. The soil is, every time we harvest, we put more compost on top of the Bacopa in order for it to just be, infused with some more organic matter. And then we put worm casting tea over it. So, we make our own worm casting vermifuge tea. And so we spray that over. And then we put the Emmy, which is a bioferment. And the way the bioferment is made is we go out and collect the top of the soil from under the forest, trees and forest floor around the farm, some of the debris, some of the soil, some of the leaves and branches, and we bring it back and we mix it all up and add some rice semolina to it. And then we add some molasses to that and mix all that up together. It gets a little sticky. And then we add some coffee grinds and some coffee husks, the shells of the coffee roasting process. And then we add some cinnamon and some cloves, which help to, just charge the bioferment. And when you apply it to the plants, it gives it a little bit of microbial protection. And then we take that, put it in a large sack after it's mixed up nicely, and tie it, and then put that sack in a 200-gallon tank, and we let it ferment in that water for about 2 weeks. And you can just smell the growth of all those microorganisms. You can imagine. This is why we call it mountain microorganisms. And you can then take it after it's all fermented and take that ferment and inject it into the soil, spray it on the crop, spray it on the leaves, spray it on the soil. And then this is one of the more direct ways that you build your soil food web.
It's like liquid gold. It's so beautiful. You can almost smell it through the pictures because it's so dark and so rich. And it's amazing that it's able to leach out into the water that quickly. And it's kind of a liquid mulch, if you will, but more like a liquid nutrient.
Yeah, and we with regenerative agriculture, you've talked about this before, but we pay all attention to the soil food web, right? And that soil food web is the beautiful life within the soil, if it's treated properly, of hyphae, mycelia, beneficial fungi, beneficial bacteria, nematodes, protozoa, all these arthropods, macroarthropods, all of these organisms that work in synergy, in harmony with each other, that actually, constitute life. They're the foundational givers of life, because what they do is in the soil, soils are inherently carry enough of nutrients to provide our nutrient needs for thousands of years. So the idea of adding fertilizers to our soil may be a little bit overthought, but the problem is we have not been able to get those nutrients into the plants effectively the way agriculture has been practiced through conventional forms of agriculture. And we're essentially killing the soil, so we have to add more fertilizer, more nutrients in order for the plants to, thrive, if that's the right word. With regenerative farming, we don't do that. We allow the soil food web, all these microorganisms in the soil, to work in harmony, to carry, to basically take what nutrition is in the proper form and bring it into the root structure of the plant. That helps to promote the growth of the plant and to promote the uptake of nutrients, and that's why in regenerative farming you have so much more nutrient density than you would in conventional farming.
I saw something somewhere that said with traditional farming, the soil is always in a negative state, which means things are always being taken out of it and very few good things are actually brought in. But with regenerative agriculture, because you're supporting the entire process of the growth, you're also building the soil. So even after a crop has been harvested, the soil is healthier than it was even before. It continues to get healthier and stronger and more potent, if you will.
Yeah, and another big difference between regenerative farming and conventional farming is tilling. We in regenerative farming we don't till. We just this year we're using an implement called a roller crimper, which comes over the crops after they've been harvested. It rolls the stem down on its side and crimps the very bottom of the stem. And so what happens is the herbaceous part of the plant starts to die back, and all that carbon just falls right into the bed in which it's growing. So you're actually building up organic matter right into the soil from the previous crops harvest. With conventional farming, you're harvesting, then you're plowing, and you're turning over, you're exposing the soil to the sun. All the soil food web is once again killed and die off. And so you never can get ahead of the game. You always end up with dead soil. And that's the difference with regenerative farming. You are building life back into your soil. And when you build life back into the soil, you are building a healthier microbiome into your crops, into your foods, into your medicines, and you're building, obviously more nutrient density.
And it's interesting to know that, over tilling, does cause us to lose a lot of our topsoil because you end up loosening a lot of it. A lot of it blows away and blows into rivers and ponds and lakes and oceans and things like that, or parts of the places where agriculture is not even an issue. And, I heard a statistic, I think it's true from the research I did. It says that we are about 60 years at the point when we will not have an adequate amount of topsoil left on our planet.
I heard that as well. It's pretty daunting to hear that.
It's scary.
You and I may not be around in 60 years. Maybe we will. But
God willing.
But the idea that, there will not be, proper life in our soil is pretty daunting to think about, because what's going to nourish us? How are the plants to be providing nutrients for our bodies? How are plants to be providing a healthy microbiome for our gut?
Mm-hmm.
And how are we going to sustain immunity? It's got to change. And I've been through various forms of organic farming and now regenerative agriculture, and I just see regenerative agriculture as the way to solve some of these really pressing concerns.
Going back to Bacopa, are there major categorical groups of people that would benefit the most from Bacopa? Should we be in a certain health condition or a weakened health condition to think about using Bacopa, or are the preventive benefits of it so strong that we could all benefit?
Yeah, we just did a really interesting study I shared with you on how what we did is we used an in vitro model of taking human neuronal cells and exposing them to our Kokora Bacopa extract, and we wanted to see how many genes for healthy brain function were upregulated, and how many genes for unhealthy brain function are downregulated. And what we found was stunning. The results, it was never seen before about how effective Bacopa is in upregulating genetic expression for things like cognitive enhancement, learning capability, memory, the overall strengthening of overall brain function, the overall, all the positive things about optimizing your cognitive performance, both in in the younger years, if you're really in college and really want to optimize memory and cognitive performance, yeah, take Bacopa. But if you're like you said, your family has a history of cognitive decline, and or if you know somebody in cognitive decline, Bacopa is the herb. There's no questioning. Bacopa is the herb to use. And the other thing we noticed in this interesting study, Jeff, is a number of the genes that turn on the expressions that lead to cognitive disease like Alzheimer's and dementia and other cognitive disorders, those genes were turned off. Does that make sense?
It does.
They were downregulated.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up because we visited and we talked about and we saw the charts and you shared them with us, and I was amazed because yes, the upregulating is absolutely fantastic, but turning off the switches on some of these areas that really lead us to decline, that's just amazing.
It is amazing, and you and I know that I like to pair herbs.
Yes.
And pairing Bacopa with lion's mane, we found even more, a broader range of benefit for cognitive function, a broader range of genes expressed that were upregulated that improved cognitive function, and more genes that were downregulated that cause cognitive decline. So, when I say downregulated genes that cause cognitive decline, these genes are known to be associated with Alzheimer's and dementia and other brain disorders. And when you downregulate a gene that is associated with these disorders, you turn that gene off, like you said. You turn it off and you disallow the opportunity for it to get expressed in different ways in the body. So that's a good thing, to turn off these genes that you want to have turned off. And it's a good thing to turn on genes that you want to have turned on for memory enhancement.
I think today, the world that we're in today, we use our brains more than ever before. But that being said, we use a lot of electronic devices today. We do a lot of quick choices with AI and search engines and stuff where we're not using those parts of the brain that I had to use, for coming up through the ranks. And we had libraries. We didn't have computers or any of that. You really had to really push and use your brain. And I'm very thankful for it. I love using some of these shortcuts today to give me answers and things that I'm looking for very quickly. But because of it, I think it's almost like our brains have gotten a little lazy. And I think that on top of stress and poor diet and unhealthy environmental things around us, and those things are affecting, and it's not just an old person geriatric problem anymore. We're seeing brain and focus and cognitive situations in much younger people, and I think there's a lot of reason for that.
Yeah, can I share with you my perspective?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Please.
the concept of increasing cognitive decline may have a lot to do with like you said, the exposure to EMFs, but it also may have something to do with the accumulation of chemical toxins in our air and water and food, and the microplastics that are now infiltrating into our bodies from our environment. And we're at a kind of a convergence place in how environmental disruption is affecting our body. And it's not just the brain, but from a TCM Chinese perspective, in cognitive decline, there are other organ systems that actually govern, like the spleen system, the kidney system, the heart system, are all playing a part in cognitive decline. So when I said Bacopa is a Rasayana or a rejuvenator, I implied that it's going to target some of the more deeper tissues in the body, tissues that are govern kidney function or kidney system function and spleen system function. I'll explain what that means, and heart system function and how those influence your brain function overall. So in Chinese medicine, the kidney system is associated with it's the seat of your vital force. It's the seat of all the vital energy is stored in the kidney system. And when I talk about the kidney system, I speak not just of the kidneys, but the reproductive organs, the pelvic tissues, and in the formative fluids that form in the reproductive tissues. So I speak of this as the seat of life. And when cognitive function is declining, we have kind of, what's the right word, depleted this foundational seat of life. This is why you see it in more older people, but you're going to see it in younger and younger and younger people because the younger population is more and more drawing upon this life energy, and they're depleting it at far too young an age. So the kidney system has got to be supported. Then the spleen system, which governs all of your digestive apparatus, your stomach, liver, gallbladder, and so forth, and how your digestive function is orchestrated in the biome of your digestive system. That's all governed by the spleen system. That too plays a role in upholding cognitive function. So when you go to find solutions botanically, and when you think about Bacopa, why Bacopa? It's why choose this kind of Rasayana? Because this kind of Rasayana can support the kidney systems, the spleen system, and it can support the brain function, the nervous function. So it's taking some of the approaches of some fundamental, needs of the body and supporting them directly.
Is Bacopa something that could be used at a younger age?
If
Teenagers,
you're,
maybe?
like I said, if you're a college student, you're really cramming to learn and retain, you need to perform with, test memory and so forth. Yeah, I mean, I would use Bacopa just for memory enhancement, clearing out the chatter. It's just, there's just too much, impulses coming into us from every direction. And, now we have to deal with it. And I would say, yes, it would help younger people, especially students.
Anyone that cannot use Bacopa?
No, I was actually looking in the literature this morning about what contradictions, are there any toxic effects from Bacopa, and I didn't really find anything substantial that would kind of cause me to raise a concern in your podcast. What's interesting, you've tasted Bacopa, so
I
you
have.
know the predominant taste. It's bitter.
Yes.
It's really bitter. It's one of the more bitter herbs that I've ever tasted. And so, it's definitely a herb that's going to affect, the overall spleen systems. And it's definitely a herb because of its bitterness that's going to help to clear dampness from the body. And dampness is one of the things that shows up with people who have cognitive decline.
You talked about pairing, and pairing it with lion's mane is brilliant because it really does uplift both sides of them, and they enhance. There's that wonderful synergism there. Are there other herbs that you think that work well with Bacopa? Would ginkgo be one?
Ginkgo would be one. Ginkgo, I like to think of ginkgo as a herb that actually works more on the vascular system and supplies more blood flow to the brain and to the extremities. But two of my favorites would be turmeric and saffron.
Okay.
I love that pairing of putting together turmeric, which there's a lot of research for on cognitive decline with amyloid plaque in the brain. And turmeric, there's some studies that show that turmeric can slow down the progression of amyloid deposits in the brain, which slows down the progression of cognitive decline. So that's really good. And saffron, both turmeric, saffron, along with Bacopa, all three of them clear dampness from the body. That's one of the fundamental things we have to do with cognitive decline. We need to clear the dampness. And people don't understand what that means so much. What is dampness in the body? And when we speak of dampness, from a Chinese perspective, this is an abnormal balance of the body fluids. And I'm talking about the fluids that are accumulating in the fascia in the body. the fascial tissues. So when we want to clear out, this excess imbalance of fluids in the body, turmeric and saffron are two of the best herbs to do that.
To your point, people talk today a lot about inflammation or unmanaged or out of control inflammation, because obviously inflammation is necessary, it's important, but unmanaged inflammation leads to many different health problems and conditions.
Yeah.
When memory is affected adversely due to genetics or environmental issues, is unmanaged inflammation one of the reasons toward that? And is that something that turmeric brought along with it may benefit?
Generally, if I may say that the three pillars of disease are dampness, stagnation, and inflammation. And one leads to the other. So it starts with dampness, which has to do with, an imbalance in the digestive apparatus. And then you get stagnation. And when you get stagnation, just look in nature, go to a pond or a body of water that's not moving, and you'll start to see, little algae growing on it. And you'll start to see, stagnant water. It smells putrid. It looks putrid. That's because the dampness is just accumulating this type of congestion, if you will, in that body of water. And in our bodies, that's exactly what happens when you have dampness. It starts to accumulate as toxins, turns into phlegm, and phlegm is the foundation of inflammatory types of disorders. And so they all go together. So yes, I would even be bold enough to say that cognitive decline is an inflammatory decline, of showing inflammation in specific ways. So I think that these herbs like Bacopa, turmeric, saffron are part of correcting this fundamental triad of imbalance by correcting the source of the imbalance, the underlying dampness, stagnation, and inflammation.
Is Bacopa recommended to be taken at a certain time of the day? Is it better with food? Is it better without food? Is there a preference?
If you're taking it as a supplement, I would take it between meals, maybe twice a day. Would be probably a good recommendation. I know Kokora is about to launch its Bacopa capsule. And as you know, you're eagerly awaiting that.
Very eagerly.
And we just launched the Lion's Mane capsule with Bacopa added to it. Beautiful pairing. So, these are really well-crafted products that are organic and regenerative organic and concentrated and, now tested at the Institute for efficacy. And I would say one capsule twice a day is a very good therapeutic dose between meals.
Okay, that's wonderful. It's Bacopa. I mean, it's sometimes it drives me crazy. We have so much technology in this country and we have so much information at our fingertips. And when we hear about something, we almost celebrate it as being brand new. And there's places around the world that have been doing it for a century, up to 1,000 years. And it's brand new to us. So even though we have a lot of technology, we're still learning a lot here. So, being able to have information where people can continue to, further their own information and their own studies and be able to make better, wiser decisions, it's important.
Yeah, it is. And, especially in the complex world we live in today, gosh, it's becoming more and more difficult to sort out, what's really causing imbalances in the body. Is it what I said? Is it the EMFs? Is it the microplastics? Is it the lack of nutrition because we don't have nutrient dense foods being put on our table anymore? Is it all of the emotional stressors in our environment? Is it the emotional isolation that elderly people are having? So many factors, and it's becoming more and more complex to try to address our wellness needs these days.
Well, I think that the upcoming release of the Bacopa is going to be fantastic, and I know this week the Lion's Mane Bacopa combination blend was shipped and is available, so that's exciting, and it's just so wonderful to be able to see all of your dreams and your hard work coming together, and to be made available. And people can actually start not only just enjoying, but actually feeling and seeing and making a difference in the health of their bodies.
Yeah, I feel honored to be a part of this, and especially bringing out Kokora products now with the regenerative component to it. I feel it's fulfilling a long-standing mission for my work. So yeah, thanks for recognizing that.
Oh, I'm so pleased. I get excited when I see my calendar and I know you're coming on. Do me a favor, leave everybody with a thought for the day. I know you have beautiful thoughts.
My thought for today is, when I think about the elderly population, so many of the elderly people are full of wisdom, yet they don't have the vitality, the energy, or the support to share their wisdom with the younger population. I view myself as somebody who's moving into that elderly status. Not there yet, but
We're tiptoeing.
tiptoeing. But I love the idea of being a mentor for the younger population, and I love the idea of introducing the importance of connection. I talked about the fascia as one of the kind of the components of why we might develop cognitive disorders in the first place, of how dampness builds in the fascia. But so fascia is the substance that connects all the cells and tissues in our body. So it teaches us that connections are essential for life and for wellness. And for those who are younger, certainly very important for the elderly population, is we have to sustain and build our connections, our social connections, these relationships that make us whole. We have to really nourish them and recognize that they are also a very important part of our journey to a health span and a lifespan that we all strive for.
Beautiful. Thank you. If you're just tuning in, I've been speaking with the one and only Ric Scalzo today, here talking about one of our deep dives into the herbs, giving everybody a better understanding. Today we spoke about Bacopa. Remember to make sure you go back in and listen to the turmeric, the ashwagandha, the ginger, the passion flower. This is episode 5 of our deep dive into these wonderful regenerative herbs, all grown at the wonderful farm down in Costa Rica, and amazing products from Kokora, coming to you at your most wonderful health food stores near you. So keep your eyes open. Make sure to go to my podcast holding site, which is my webpage, drjeffreyburke.com. Tap on the Honest Health logo to go to Spotify. That's the one I want you to tap on if you're driving, because it's only audio. Otherwise, I'd love you to go to the YouTube channel and watch the interview. I think sometimes the visible and visual conversation, and I think sometimes it hits a little more to home, if you will. So thank you for tuning in. Ric, thank you for being here again today.
And thank you, Jeff.
Always a pleasure for me. And enjoy your beautiful Costa Rican weather down there.
All right, will do.
Be well, my friend.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.